Hey there. Are you Adam Graham?
The very same. And this is my old-time radio snack wagon.
Welcome to the Old-Time Radio Snack Wagon, where we serve up a bite-sized portion of old-time radio. And now, here's your Snack Wagon host, Adam Graham.
Today, we're serving up a musical treat courtesy of CBS News. Okay, that might need a little bit of explaining. World War II made Americans more curious about the world in which we lived. The actions of seemingly obscure people and nations we hadn't heard of had changed the face of the world and the lives of so many Americans. Plus, there was a great desire for increased understanding between nations and figuring out what we could do to contribute to that. CBS News analyst Dwight Cooke sought to fill that need. He took a tape recorder and set out on a trip throughout Asia. He stopped in various countries. I have transcriptions from a couple of countries he visited, but I'm sure there were many more. In each country, he'd record several programs. And then when he returned to the U.S., the tapes would be edited and transcribed as a series called You and the World, which began airing over CBS in 1951. The interviews are interesting, but a bit too wonky and dry to be served up on the old-time radio snack wagon, but they'd be of great interest to researchers of the era. However, Mr. Cooke also would share some of the music from each country with the cooperation from local radio stations. And that we can definitely serve up. So here, from the early 1950s, is the episode of You and the World, the Music of India.
You and the World, with Dwight Cooke. In previous programs of this series, with Dwight Cooke visiting Asia, we've heard music from each of the countries he visits, as well as the voices of the leaders and the people. Now we're going to be introduced to the music of India. Here is Dwight Cooke.
Today I'm talking to you from Studio 13 of AIR, All India Radio, here in Broadcasting House on Parliament Street in New Delhi, India. And today, with the cooperation of All India Radio, you're going to have the pleasure of hearing a group of very carefully made selections of Indian music. Now, this Indian music is rather different from American or Western music, as you'll notice as we go along. The orchestras are principally strings with a little wind and percussion music, and again, in contrast with the Western music, where ours is very harmonic, where the musicians play from scores and very precisely, here the great musicians improvise around the melody to suit themselves. They don't have the freedom that we would have in American bebop. There are a good many very complicated rules that they in turn must follow, but I don't think you'll be interested in pursuing that part of Indian music, but get your ears ready now for a little different music. The first selection you're going to hear is a raga, which I would translate as a sort of a classical tune, a melody which the Indians are very used to. It's called Marul Bahag. You'll find it a somewhat romantic piece of music. The orchestra playing it in unison consists of about 16 pieces, so let's hear what it sounds like. there was the first piece of Indian music, Maru Bihag. Next in this group of pieces of Indian music, I want you to hear a very sad folk tune played on the flute with a drum accompaniment. It's called Pahari, and it's a sort of a shepherd boy's lament on his flute as he shepherds his flocks in the mountains. Very sad, very Indian. See what I mean, sad? The mountain boy playing on his flute, Pahari. Next, I want you to hear another solo instrument, the shanai, which is a little bit like a cross between an oboe and a flute in our Western music. You're going to hear a bit of another classical raga. Actually, this particular raga takes a good 45 minutes. It symbolizes the two sides of life, the sad and the gay, but since the mountain boy was very sad indeed, let's hear a little of the gay music here, double time and oboe piping. That was the shanai. As I say, it goes on for another 42 or 3 or 4 minutes, but it gave you some idea of what that instrument sounded like. Next, I want you to hear a little bit of a classical piece of Indian music called a khayal, which I certainly don't do justice to in the pronunciation, but it's a classical form, an imaginative improvisation of one of these old melodies, and I think this one you may find a little difficult, so we'll play just a snatch of it, but it gives you an idea of the old Indian classical music. For there was your piece of the Royale. If you notice, the voice was included there, but again, it's treated very much like an instrument. It could almost be an oboe itself as the voice sings along in this piece of improvisation. For our final selection of Indian music, I want you to hear a folk tune from the United Provinces, somewhat near Delhi. This is a folk tune which features a sitar, which is a plucked stringed instrument. And this is a very nice, I'm going to let you hear as much as we can of this. This is a very nice folk tune of a girl thinking about her loved one who's away, and she's sad when she thinks of that. Then in her reverie, she thinks of some of the gay times they had together and the dances they went together, and then the music changes its mood and shows the gaiety as she thinks in the past, and then again it comes back to the sadness of alone and bereaved at the moment. I think you'll find it lots of fun. This starts with an almost Irish jig, and then you'll hear the rhythm come in. As the girl rejoices as she thinks back over the time she was happy with her loved one, we have to stop this program of Indian music coming to you from All India Radio, Broadcasting House, Parliament Street in New Delhi, India.
By tape recording from New Delhi, India, you've been listening to You and the World with Dwight Cooke, introducing you to the music of India. This is the United States Armed Forces Radio Service, the voice of information and education.
Welcome back. Different yet still very beautiful music that would have been a bit of a revelation to listeners in the 1950s, which it can be hard for some folks in the 21st century to wrap their minds around. Today you can go on your favorite music service or YouTube and listen to the songs of any musical act on earth practically. But it was a very different world in the 1950s, with musical choices and availability more limited for most people by what came on the radio and what they could find at their local record store. More than 70 years later, the program is, if anything, more relevant, as it does a good job sharing the musical roots of a nation that's now the most populous on earth and whose influence in the world and culture only continues to grow with time. It's time for me to close up the old snack wagon. But don't worry, we'll be back with another serving of old-time radio goodness before you know it. If you want to enjoy some of our longer-form podcasts, you can feast away at my website at greatdetectives.net. Your emails are also welcome at adam@snackwagon.net.
The Old Time Radio Snack Wagon comes to you from Boise, Idaho. Your host is Adam Graham. Sound production is by Rhines Media, LLC. You can listen to past episodes of the Old Time Radio Snack Wagon as well as connect on social media at our website at snackwagon.net. Email suggestions for episodes to adam@snackwagon.net. This has been the Old Time Radio Snack Wagon.
Until next time, goodbye.